Hey guys, just going to run through a tutorial on how to make a skin or custom livery for AMS2 from beginning to end using the new Specular and Fresnel maps. Those things are optional, the spec and fres maps, you don't have to do them. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. And this is going to be just a technical demo, not an artistic one, because I am not an artist in any way, shape or form. But this should get you going anyway. So first thing you need to do is go to the Reza Studios forum, have a look under AMS2, go to the general discussion area, and you'll see something in here called the livery overrides. It is pinned, but it's not always at the top. It depends on who's commented on what, so just might need to scroll down a bit to find it. We're lucky it's at the very top today. Click on it. You need to make sure that we're on the first page. So, oh, look, somebody else is doing minis. Good on them. Let's go to page number 1. And scroll down a bit. This is where all the templates live. Now, the templates are the things we're going to be using to start painting. So you scroll down until you find the one that we're looking for, which will be the Mini Cooper JCW. Download the RAR file. You can use WinRAR or 7-zip to open it. Once you have got that RAR file, which I have downloaded previously, so I'm just going to grab it quickly. Inside this RAR file is a PSD file, which is a Photoshop document. We need to copy that into the game folder. Is probably the easiest way to get started with the skinning, because then it just makes it quicker when you're saving the output files that the game will read. The game can't read the PSD. This is just a template for you to do the painting. You need to save these as DDS, which are direct draw surface files. So if you put this in the same folder where you need to save the surface files, then it just makes it much faster. So to find the game folder, the quickest way is to open up Steam, right click, go manage, and then choose browse local files. That'll take you straight to your game directory. So to Automobilista 2. So under there you'll have vehicles, textures. Just keep drilling in until you get your list of cars. I'm going to go MI for Mini. There's the Mini Cooper. So this is the folder where we need to save our DDS files, which are our custom livery files for the game to read them in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract my template into that folder as well, so I can start working on it. Now, the other thing that you'll find in this folder is this XML file. And what we need to do is make a copy of this file. So we'll just make a copy here. And we need to rename this file and get rid of the _dist part. So what we want is a file that's just called mini_cooper.xml. Just be careful if you've got your hide file extensions turned on, which is a Windows default, it's on by default. You'll just see Mini Cooper. And if you open this file up, you'll see that it tells you to call it minicooper.xml. So if you were to do that in this current format and go .xml, you'll go, oh, that's cool. I've got the right file name. It looks correct. But when you load the game, it's not going to find this file because, in fact, because you're hiding extensions, you've actually called it xml.xml. So the game is very specific about its file name and it will ignore that. So you need to make sure that you've only got one .xml. So the best way is to not hide file extensions for known file types. So now that we've got this file named correctly, we've got it opened up in a text editor of some description. You can basically read through this. There's 3 different types of liveries you can do: default, matte, and chrome. We're going to be doing the chrome one today because the chrome, you can actually get all the effects of the matte and the default one. So chrome is the most important one. Just keep scrolling down and you'll see you've got some examples here. These examples are what the game is going to load. So these are the DDS files. You've got a preview image, which is when you're selecting your skin, so you can see which one it is. You've got your body, your spec, and your Fresnel. So these are the 2 new ones since patch 1.4. Body's always been there. So we only really want this part in our XML file because that's our Chrome example. So we can delete all of this other stuff. So we're just going to highlight all that. We just hit delete. Now, the other thing to note in an XML file is comments. So anything between this less than exclamation mark hyphen hyphen and the closing tag here, this is called a comment, and this will be completely ignored by the game. So what you need to do is get rid of those. You need to get rid of the opening comment tag and the closing comment tag. Now the game will read this in. This livery ID is quite important. Each car in the game has a number of liveries that you can override, and this ID needs to correspond to the livery in the game. Now they all start at number 51, and they go up from there depending on how many custom liveries are in each car class. So we're going to call this our demo livery. It's going to be Chrome. Now the paths in here, this is like a subfolder within our Mini Cooper folder. So this is our Mini Cooper folder. If we were to have a subfolder in here called My Racing Team, then we could put our preview and our body into that one, and that would load it. I'm not going to bother with that. I am only going to put my DDS file straight in here, so I don't want any of these My Racing Team parts. So I'm just going to get rid of those, and I'm going to get rid of this path as well. So mine's going to be called Demo, and same with this one here, I'm going to call it demo_p, and this one is just going to be called demo as well. So I've got my 4 files set up here. I've got my preview image is going to be called demo p, my body demo, and demo spec, and demo, I'm just going to keep that shorter. I'm going to make it called demo fres, and it's going to be in slot number 51, and pull that correctly, and done. So my XML file is now set up. I can save that one. It's in my game folder, in my overrides folder. Now this XML file only gets read when the game is first launched. So if you make changes to this, you'll need to relaunch the game. So it's good to set this up first, and then you only need to launch the game once, because even though these files don't exist, we can create them after the game is launched, and the game will read them in dynamically, but it won't reload this XML file. So set this up first, then we'll load the game. So let's leave that as it is, and we're ready to launch AMS2. Now before I do that, those livery IDs, you can actually view those in the game. If you go to Properties and you add this launch option, -show livery IDs, it'll actually show the livery IDs over the previews in the game, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's just launch the game. Game up and running. Let's go into just a test day. We will go and choose our Mini, go to Livery Select. Now you can see that 51, because you can see our IDs now because of that launch parameter. 51's got no preview image, and that's because we don't have a preview image yet. We haven't created it. So the game, we can tell that it's loaded our XML file correctly, but there's no image to load. And if we actually go into the showroom on that image, you can see we've just got a white car now because the game can't find our demo.dds file or anything else. So it's just given us a white blank canvas to paint on. So let's just go back. So the next thing we want to do is actually start our painting. So we've downloaded our template already from the website. We've got Photoshop here. Let's go and open up our template folder over here. Actually, not that one. We want this one. This is the one that we unzipped into our game folder. So we're going to drag that PSD file into Photoshop. I'm using Photoshop for this demo, but you guys can use whatever you want, paint.net or GIMP. They're all pretty much the same and can do the same sort of things. So this is the template. It's got some layers on it. The layers at the top of the list are on top of the layers below. So if I hide this layer, you can see the layers below it. If I was to change the color on this layer, it will affect just that layer, but the layers below it you can still see because of this layer mask here. So if I hide that layer, and you can see the layers below. So that's basically how Photoshop layers work. The higher up the list, the further on top they are. This layer, which we're just modifying now, this red one, doesn't actually get drawn onto the car. It's basically just a visual guide for you to see where the edges of the car are. We don't really need it. I'm just going to delete it, so we'll get rid of it just to keep it a bit neater. They give us this body folder as well. It's got nothing in it, it's empty, so I'm just going to delete that as well, just for simplicity. So all we've got is a base color and our wireframes, and a wireframe just tells you where to draw. So the base color, if you double click on it, you can basically just change your car to whatever color you want. So if you want a blue car, you can click on OK. Now, what we can do if we want to view this in game is we go File, Save as Copy. We choose our DDS file, which is our Direct Draw Surface file. We're already in the right folder because that's where we saved our template. So Photoshop automatically picks that folder for us. We don't have to go finding it. And we just need to give it a name. So we called it Demo in the XML. It's going to save it as a DDS. I'm going to leave the wireframe on for now, just so you can see it. We click on Save. Now the format of the DDS for a body needs to be a BC1 or a DXT1. You'll see in that pop-up it tells you they're DXT1, so you just click on that, click on Save, and that's done. So now in our folder, if we look at our Mini Cooper folder, you can see that we've now got this demo DDS, which corresponds to our XML, which was called demo DDS. So if we go to our game, we can reload that livery. Now to load that livery again, what we have to do is click off it, back on it, and that will reload the DDS files. Click on Showroom, and here we can see that we've now got our blue livery, the same as we had in Photoshop. So let's go back to Photoshop again. And I'm going to put this base color just back to where it was before because I quite like that dark gray color. So there's our base livery. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put an image on here. I'm going to keep this really simple. So we're just going to go and open up a browser. I've already done a search here for Honda logo. So we're just going to go images. Now this gives you a list of all images, and the ones that are best for using on paint on any application are transparent background ones. So you don't have to worry about this white box landing on your car. So the easiest way to do that is just go to all types here and just choose transparent. And then you'll get things that are just have a transparent background. So I'm going to grab this Honda logo here, have a look, and you can tell it's transparent because you get this checkerboard picture underneath here. So we're going to go File, Save As. We're going to put it into this Demo Resources folder. Doesn't really matter what the name is. And click on OK. So we've now got a logo saved in our Resources folder here. So to get this into our image, we can just drag it and drop it on top here. There he is. So we get this blue box around here, which basically means that we can resize by grabbing one of these anchor points, or we can rotate by clicking outside the blue box and just moving your mouse around. If you hold down Shift, it'll actually snap to degrees, which is pretty cool. So what we'll do is we'll snap it this way. We're going to resize it, and we're going to stick it over here on the door. I can zoom in, I can hold down Alt and just use my mouse wheel to zoom in a bit and get it into position. So we'll just make it a bit smaller and chuck him here like this. This wire guide is good. I can use it to line up the image. So I'm going to put the A pretty much on this line here. And I'm going to click on the tick to keep it there. So I've now got a Honda logo on my door. I want to put the Honda logo on my other door as well. So what I can do is I can either press Ctrl J to duplicate, or I can right click and duplicate the layer, whatever's easier for you to remember. And so we've now got a duplicate. Now the duplicate is sitting over the top of where the original layer was. So what I want to do is I need to move it to this door here. So I'm going to hold down Shift, because what Shift does is it locks it to either a horizontal or a vertical axis instead of being able to move it anywhere I want. So I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to drag so it stays level, and I'm going to put it on this door. But you'll notice that when we're looking at this door, the Honda logo is now upside down. So what I can do is I can press Control T to transform this Honda logo. If you don't remember Control T, you can get to the transform from here as well, free transform. Once you've done that, we can turn it around to face the other way, and we can position it the same as we did before. So remember to hold your Shift key down, so we're only moving it horizontally, and then we can hit our tick and we're done. So we've now got a Honda logo on each door, but I'm not sure if you can notice the problem that we've got yet, but we'll show you. So we're going to turn off our grid, and we're going to save this as a copy. We're going to choose our DDS. We're going to save over the top of our demo, BC1. We're going to reload our livery select, off it, on it, showroom. So you can see the bit of a problem there. Our Honda logo looks cool, it's in the right direction, but our wing is facing backwards. This one looks cool, he's facing forwards. This one's kind of facing the wrong way. Not really ideal. So let's fix that. Let's go back into Photoshop. So this is the one we're having a problem with here. So let's just zoom in on it. And what we want to do is reverse the direction of this wing. And it's pretty easy to do. What we can do is we can make another copy of this layer. So I'm going to press Control J. That layer is right over the top of this one. Now Photoshop has a thing called a mask, and a mask can hide or reveal parts of this particular layer. So to start with, I'm going to turn that copy of the layer off, and I'm going to go to this layer here. So I'm going to hide the wing. So I'm going to add a layer mask. Now I'm going to use my marquee tool to draw a selection around the wing. Now with a mask selected, white reveals and black conceals. So what I want to do is I want to fill this with black so it conceals this wing shape. Done. So now you can see that all I've got is my Honda. Now if I turn on my other layer, the wing is back because I've got the wing there. So this one here I want to reverse. I'm going to press Control T for transform. I'm going to flip it vertically, and I'm going to hit OK. And now you see that my Honda is facing backwards. So what I want to do is create another mask on this layer. I'm going to select my Honda this time, and I'm going to fill that with black. So now I've got one layer with just the wing facing in the right direction, and I've got another layer with just the Honda. If I put them both on at once, I've got my Honda wings facing in the right direction. So that's a quick and easy fix to fix that logo. So now that I've got my logos in the right spots, I can just highlight those. So I've basically clicked on the first one, shift clicked, and then I can press Control G to put them in a group, and I can call them my decals. So I've got those in a nice folder, and I can just turn that folder on and off to hide or show them if I need to. So that's pretty much my base layer. So I'm just going to save that again because that's as much painting as we're going to do today. The rest of it's going to be about the spec and the Fresnel maps. So let's just save that. Done. And now if we reload our livery, you see we've got a Honda on that side, and we've got a Honda on that side. So that's all looking pretty cool. All right, the next thing we're going to do is look at the Specular Map. Now the Specular Map determines what color light is reflecting off this base layer. So our base layer at the moment is the default gloss from the game. It's reflecting its own color light, But what the spec map will do is determine what color is going to reflect off this sort of gray color and how much light is going to reflect off the gray color. So there's two parts to a spec map. So with this body that we've been dealing with now, there's just the color. So we've got red and this gray. A spec map has got color and transparency. So the color determines the color of the light that's going to reflect off this gray or the red. And the transparency layer is going to determine how much light it's going to reflect off. So what I'm going to do is going to create a new folder here, and I'm going to call it spec. So what we can do in this spec layer is determine what color of light we're going to reflect, but we won't do that just yet. And in the channels layer, we're going to create an alpha channel in here, which is like a transparency, which is going to determine how much light is reflected. So I'm going to click on this little plus symbol in the channels layer. That creates an alpha for me. Now with the alpha channel, black is completely transparent, so 100% transparency, and white is 100% opaque. So if I just turn that off for a second, the transparency, we can have a look at that with the decals as well. If I click on that, so this is opacity, so it's basically the same thing. So if I turn down the opacity, you can see that becomes more and more see-through. And the same with this base layer. If I turn down the opacity, it becomes more and more see-through until I can see my background. If I turn that off, you'll see that this is completely transparent. And the more I turn it on, the more solid it gets. So that's what we're doing basically with this alpha channel here as well. So black means completely see-through and white means completely opaque. So I'm going to leave this at black, so everything is completely see-through. So basically what that means, if it's see-through, it's not going to reflect any light. If it's white, it's going to reflect the default amount of light that we just saw in the game. So this is the default amount of light if that alpha channel was white, but we've got our alpha channel as black, which means we're not going to reflect any light at all. So what we're going to do, we'll just put our RGB channels back on so we can see. We are going to save this now as our spec map. So we are going to go into here. We're going to call it what we called it in the XML, which was _spec. And for the spec map, we need to support both the color and the alpha channel. So our alpha is completely black, which means completely transparent. Our color is the same color as what the game already has. We're going to save both of those, and to do that we need to choose a BC3 or a DXT5. So we click on save. So in our game folder now, you'll see that we've got our base color. We've got our spec map now, which because it's completely transparent, looks like it's completely black, but it's actually got this as the color layer, and then it's got an alpha layer, which is completely black, which is what we're looking at. So if we go into the game now, we'll reload our livery. So we've now got completely matte car because we have told the game that we don't want any light reflected off these surfaces. We've made that alpha channel completely transparent, and the alpha channel determines how much light is reflected off here. So that kind of looks cool. It's a very matte color, but it doesn't look the greatest. So what we can do is we can change the color of the reflected light. So even though we've said total black, it's not absolute zero reflected light. There's still it's like the minimum amount of reflected light. So let's go back into Photoshop, and in our spec map here, we're going to create a new color adjustment, so solid color, and we're going to choose something like this, a very sort of white color as our spec map. Now that color is going to be reflected off these colors here, and I don't want that white to be reflected off this red. I only want that white color to be reflected off the black. So I can use my mask again. So if I go to my decals, I can grab these guys and I can duplicate them. So I can press Ctrl J. I can then merge these together, merge layers. So now I've basically got a copy of my decals in one layer. So if I turn these ones off, I've now got one layer that's got my decals on it. And if I control and click on that layer, it makes a selection of those decals together. So now what I can do is go back to my white layer, and remembering that black conceals and white reveals. So at the moment, white is revealing everything. So I want to fill these bits with black. So if I bring up my fill menu and I go fill with black, then it's put black onto my mask here. You can just see it there. And it's left my decals visible under here. So I press Ctrl D. Now the reason I merged them over here, and I merged a copy of them and not my originals, is because if I merge my originals and I want to move these later, it makes it very hard. Whereas in this way here, I can just delete this layer and I've still got my originals sitting there if I want to. So this is my new spec map. My channels hasn't changed. This says I want the minimum amount of reflected light from everything. And the color of the reflected light now, which is the color channel over here in my spec folder, is going to be this white color and the red color. So remember at the moment it's this very, very dark matte black color here. If I now save this as my spec map, the game, we'll go back to select the livery. But now we've got this like gunmetal grey matte effect. So the base color of the car hasn't changed. All we've done is we've said we want this white color to be reflecting off that very dark grey color. The red color we haven't changed, so that is still the same as it was before. But we've told the whole car to be matte. So if we don't want this red to be matte red, we want that to be the same glossy color as it was before, we can go back to Photoshop. We can control click on our merged decals layer, like that. We can go to our channels. We can click on our alpha channel. And we can fill that with white. So we can say, I want the default amount of light to be reflected off this section. I want the minimum amount of light to be reflected off this section. And we can go back and save it. Now our red should be a bit more glossy, but you notice that it's not really that glossy as it was before. And the reason is that we're reflecting red light off a red background. So it's not reflecting as much light as it normally would. So with your spec map, what you sometimes have to do is lighten this color a bit. So we can do that in our spec folder again. And in Photoshop, there's a thing called a curves layer, which allows you to adjust the exposure of things. So I'm going to move it below this gray layer because I don't want it to affect that one, but I do want it to affect the decals layer. So I do that. This is my properties for my curves layer. And I can basically drag this curve and this point here around. So I can make that red a bit lighter like that. So now I've got my red. If I turn the spec map layer off, I've got my red color, which is going to have a lighter red color reflecting off it. So let's give that a save. See how that looks. So then we can see that that's a little bit more glossy. So that's our basic livery at the moment. So we've got our base color, and we've got a spec map sitting over the top of it that's saying don't reflect the minimum amount of light off all this black area, reflect the default amount of light off this red area, and the color of light we've determined using those solid color layers to say that this should be like almost white, and this is like a brighter red color. So let's move on to our Fresnel layer next, and we'll see what we can do with that one. So let's hide our spec layer again, and we're going to create a new folder this time called Fres. Now, a Fresnel layer is just black and white, and the blacker or darker the area, the more of a chrome effect is going to be occurring, and the lighter the color, then no chrome effect is going to be occurring. So we want to make two solid colors under this. So we're just going to play with black and white at the moment. So we're going to make a white one, and we'll make a black one. And in fact, we might make one that's 50% gray as well. So we'll do another solid color, and we'll do something around here. We'll put that in the middle. All right. Now, remembering that our masks white reveals, so it's revealing all of this black, and same with this one here. So what we want to do is have not all of this as black, so we're going to invert our mask. So we click on Control I, and that will hide this layer and reveal what's underneath. So the same again, we don't want to do this gray, so we're going to Control I. So we're going to do white. So if this was our Fresnel, this means that nothing is going to be chrome, which is where we want to start. Now, for our white areas, for our chrome areas, if we just turn on our wireframe again, so we can choose certain things to be chrome. So let's, for example, have a look at our wireframe here. These are the wing mirrors, and these are the door handles. So let's make these guys chrome. So I'm going to choose my pen tool, and we're going to draw just a very rough selection around these. One wasn't very good, so let's just fix it and hit selection, no feather. Done. So we've now got a selection around this box here, and I want to make these completely chrome. So I'm going to choose my black layer over here, and I want to fill this with white to reveal my black layer. So I've got white as my background color, so all I have to do is press delete on my keyboard, and that's black. And let's do the same to the other mirror on the other side. I've got my pen tool still selected. Make a very rough selection around here. Press delete, and that's done as well. The other thing that we're going to make chrome is our headlights. So these are our headlights here. If you're not sure which parts are which in your template, you can just paint different colors on each of the parts and then load it up into the game and just have a look and see what part is what color and just compare that to your template. So these are the headlights. This is the spoiler on the back. You've got a roof scoop. These are the little badges on the sides of the front quarter panels. This is the front window banner. This is the rear window banner. So you can basically just work it out. These are the bonnet grills. So let's just go to the marquee tool. We're going to just draw a rough selection around this. And we'll do these bonnet little grills as well. Done. So that is basically our spec map. Turn off our wireframe again. So we've said make these completely chrome effect and make these areas here no chrome effect. So let's save that as our Fresnel. So we'll go save as a copy. Our Fresnel in our XML we called Fres. Our Fresnel doesn't need transparency, so we'll change this to a BC1. Done. So now in our folder, we've got three files. We've got our base color, we've got our Fresnel, and we've got our spec map. So that's our three components. Now the Fresnel, we've told it that we want to have full chrome over here, But in our spec map, if you remember, we just turn off our Fresnel for a second, go back to our spec map and have a look at our alpha channel. We've told the alpha channel that we don't want any light reflecting off anything except for these Honda logos. So we can't very well have chrome and no light reflecting. That's not going to work very well. So let's see what happens in the game when we choose that. So you can see here we've got this sort of dull looking color for our components because the spec map is overriding the Fresnel map. The Fresnel map is saying, hey, make this a chrome, but the spec map is saying, hey, don't reflect any light off this. So that doesn't work. So let's go back to Photoshop and we need to change this alpha channel to allow light to reflect off this by making those areas white. So let's go back over here. We're going to control click on our selection. That's going to select these areas of the Fresnel map that we had before, so that we can then adjust our alpha channel. So we're on our alpha channel. We want to make these white. So I'm just going to press delete because I've got white as my background color. So it's going to delete to white. So now my alpha channel, which is part of my specular map, says allow full light reflection off these areas. So I now need to save my specular map again. So this was the base color of my spec map. Let's go File, Save as Copy. We are saving over the spec map as a BC3 because we need to support transparency this time because we need that alpha channel in there. So let's have a look at the three layers that we've got now. So we've got our base layer, which is all just one color except for the two Honda badges. We've then got our spec map, which we've said reflect white light off of everything and a lighter red light off the Honda badges. In our spec map, we've also got this alpha channel, which we've said don't reflect any light or the minimum amount of light off these black areas and the maximum amount of light off these white areas. And then we've also got a Fresnel layer here, which has said leave these as the default material type and make these parts chrome. So this was the mirrors, the door handles, the bonnet grills, and the front headlights. So now that we've done that, let's reload this again. Have a look at what we've got. So now we've got chrome headlights, bonnet grills, and mirrors. So that's basically how it works. Now, the color of the reflected light here we've got as white, which is why this is silver. So basically we've got the dark background with the white reflected light, which is making this silver. And we can change the color of that reflected light back in Photoshop. And that's part of our spec map. Remember, our spec map controls the color of the reflected light. So let's turn off our Fresnel group. We're on our spec map now. Let's create another solid color layer. And this time, let's make it like a bit of a bright sort of yellow color like this. Now, we don't want the whole thing to be yellow. We only want those parts for the grills and so forth. So we had that in our spec map over here. So this is our mask that we need. So we can copy this mask onto this layer by holding the Alt key. So we can just hold down Alt, we can drag that down and drop it onto that layer and we can replace the mask. And now we've got yellow on top of those chrome parts. So our spec map is now saying reflect white off all of these bits and yellow off these parts, which also happen to be chrome. So let's resave our spec map again. BC3. Reload our livery. And now you can see we've got gold chrome instead of silver chrome. So we've still got the same underlying color, which is the black. We're reflecting white off of the black in the spec map here. We're reflecting yellow off of the black in the spec map here. We're telling the alpha channel in the spec map to reflect full light here and the minimum light here. And in our Fresnel, we've said make this material chrome in these areas. So that is pretty much it. From there, you should be able to pretty much paint and do whatever you want. So good luck, guys. I really look forward to seeing what you come up with. I'm sure you're more artistic than I am. But yeah, that should technically get you going. So yeah, thanks for watching.